They're putting some sort of chemical, probably, oh my God, probably from the bombs that they're dropping over our head. I found out some very interesting things from the hangout last night from Garbage Man, who watches Gabriel Chan on Fox News. Oh man, okay, all that stuff going on with Iran and Israel. Israel is not the one who's been bombing Iran. That has been my husband Brent and his military. Yeah, and he had a successful mission. He eliminated underground semen producing factories. They were producing semen in order to make bombs to make everybody retarded. Yeah, they've been reporting this all week on Gabriel Chan Fox News, according to the Garbage Man. So yeah, they've been making semen. Yeah, so I'm going to be, for meditation, I was thinking of going to Big Spring Park. I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of suspicious characters. But I changed my mind after my hangout with Garbage Man. Well, last night I kept waking up with leg spasms, and I was drinking water. Well, at the beginning of the day, I didn't drink water because they're going on all-out bioweapons, okay? Yeah, so Brent successfully eliminated all of their underground facilities because the Jesuits took over Iran. According to Garbage Man, they've also taken over Malaysia. Yeah, so I'm going to be making a YouTube video to let people know about this. You say, why in the world won't Brent write you an email and stuff? I have a feeling his military operations are still ongoing, and he cannot let me know some things. And I have total faith in him. Yeah. I'm really proud of my husband. Yeah, I'm not wearing any sunscreen because I'm going out pretty early. I'm just going to go to Kroger and just get me some toilet paper. It's about 7:33. Might be good for me to get a little bit of vitamin D anyway. Yeah, when you wear sunscreen, it blocks your skin from producing the vitamin D. So, yeah, since I'm going out early, I should be fine. So yeah, today I'm going to make a YouTube video. Actually, I was due to make it yesterday, but a day late is not a big deal, as long as I'm doing stuff Jesus likes. Yeah. My sister is also doing some interesting things. She's no longer working and has applied for workman's comp, according to Garbage Man, who apparently gets this from Gabriel Chan of Fox News. See, he can get that and I can't. She apparently fell on a desk and is claiming she's not able to work, and she's getting workman's comp. And the Garbage Man told me this right in the middle of a conversation where we were talking about her psychopath tendencies. And I said, "Oh my goodness, Garbage Man!" I told him that I kind of played the role of psychiatrist, or you know what? Oh, I did remember my umbrella. And I gave her I used Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist. And I said I was being generous, but I gave her a score of 32 out of possible 40, which makes her a clear-cut psychopath. However, if I wasn't being generous, she would have got a score of 34, and that would have made her a strong psychopath. But after Garbage Man told me that of her latest ploy, where she's now, one of the reasons her score didn't go up to 36 is because I gave her a 0 for the one about leeching the system. You know, because psychopaths will tend to take advantage of others in order to leech off of them. Now that I'm hearing she quit her job, okay, psychopaths usually can't keep a job because their criminal behavior gets them in trouble and they get fired. So yeah, or they get laid off, or they do criminal stuff. My brilliant psychopath sister has decided she predicted a firing, okay? So she probably decided to pre-fire herself by deliberately playing like she got injured so she could claim workman's comp, which means I would bump the score from 0 to 2 on the psychopathy checklist for leeching the system. And then another score that I gave her a 1 on probably should be a 2. So I think I would now bump up her psychopathy score to a 36 or even a 38 out of 40. She is a very strong psychopath. Yeah. I'll be discussing that in yeah, which means we're going to have a lot of fun. And what's even worse than that is she's a smart one, okay? When it comes to evil, I would put Angelina Ballerina and my sister about even. Yeah, they're about even when it comes to evil. Yeah. However, my sister is smarter than Angelina, so we're going to have a lot of fun. Now, one thing, I woke up like 3 or 4 times last night. Fortunately, I was able to go back to sleep. The leg spasms and feet spasms, were pretty painful, and they would have awakened anyone. Yeah, I'm being poisoned, to put it in a nutshell, okay? I'm being poisoned. If they're willing to try to poison, use a bioweapon to try and make the human race, all retarded, well, yeah. When you're dealing with a psychopath, they will scorch the earth to win, okay? And they won't lose a wink of sleep over it. I noticed my sister never ever had trouble sleeping. Never. I've noticed that about psychopaths in general. They have a zero conscience. Nothing bothers them. She could. You say, well, if that's the case, why don't they do like Angelina and, send a bomb that would destroy the planet, and then we're dealing with psychopaths, the automatons with IQs in the millions, okay? The problem with doing that is that God the Father will stop them, and they know it. It was God the Father who stopped the Gail android, and they know that, so they know their history. It is rather warm. I might need to get my umbrella out. Hold on. I'm not wearing sunscreen though. Oh my God. I'm seeing a truck just went by and he's making a ton of noise. They're fearless too. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and put my umbrella up. Yeah, you're going to have to cut your losses when you're dealing with psychopaths. Yeah, and when you go to war with them, especially if we've got 72 million of them or more like we're dealing with right now, you will suffer damage. It's inevitable. So just expect it and go with it. It's impossible to fight a band of psychopaths and not suffer damage. You're not going to be able to outwit them all the time. Yeah, you're dealing... Yeah, they're masters at manipulation. And they're masters at exploiting your weak spots. So if you have an ounce of conscience anywhere, they're going to find out what that is, okay? And they'll exploit it. Heartlessly. As cold as ice. Yep, they'll exploit it. Yep. And if there's anything that scares you, they'll exploit that too, because they're basically fearless. You say, what do you mean? They're not scared. Yeah, they're fearless. It's part of their brain chemistry. They just don't have fear like we do. Things that we would be scared of, they'll just go through as calm as a cucumber. Yeah, Sun Tzu's a psychopath. That's why when we had the big problem with the interdimensional mites, he was as calm as a cucumber. Yeah, didn't even rattle him. Typical psychopath. You say, how can a psychopath have a morality programming? Well, it depends on how your morality programming is programmed. Lightning bolts and slingstones and any willing and knowing brain control supporters and psychopaths. Take them all out. Yeah, looks like we've got a bunch of psychopaths sitting here. You know what? Nope, it's not safe. We'll go this way. Got to get my walk anyways. Yeah. They will go scorched earth to win. They'll do anything. Morality will mean nothing to them. They don't care about anybody's moral standards. They don't care about anybody's religion. Winning at all costs is their motto. Okay? They will do anything to win. To win means power and control for a psychopath. And I would put Satan on the list. He's a psychopath too. Believe it or not, I actually think Satan has more of a conscience than my sister. You gotta be kidding. Slightly more of one. He's only slightly better than her morally. But I can go. I'm gonna go. The psychopaths are putting a bunch of nasty bombs in the air. There's a bunch of them over here by this bus stop sitting. They're right along my... They're very brazen. They'll get right in your face. Like I said, they're fearless. Investigate, execute, Brent. We got some psychopaths over here, I can tell. I'm going to try to avoid them. It's impossible to avoid them, though, because like I said, they're fearless and they will get in your face. Like I said, they'll go scorched earth to win. Yeah, I would give my sister a score of about 38 out of 40 now. She is a super bad psychopath. Yeah, they're smoking too. Could be brain control drugs in their cigarette smoke. I wouldn't put it past them. Yeah, the brain control's been terrible. Yeah, when you might say, do you think maybe Sun Tzu turned off his morality programming? He might have. But then, I don't know. A personal opinion, I don't think he needs to turn off his morality programming to be evil. Think about this. If your morality programming states that morality is that the superior should reign over the inferior, which appears to be Sun Tzu's morality, your morality programming would determine good and evil according to how you define superior. Okay? There you go. In Sun Tzu's view, superior would be defined by higher intelligence and the inability to be tricked. Okay? That means you could be a psychopath and be considered superior with such a morality programming, which is exactly what I think is going on with the automatons. Yeah. Yeah. Think about it. Sun Tzu, in many respects, is a perfect psychopath. He has no normal human feelings. He totally lacks empathy. Oh yes, psychopaths have zero empathy, okay? Yeah, they have zero empathy. So, yeah. So, yeah, you must say, why didn't Jesus warn you about this? Well, I think he was planning a rapture, I really do. I think he was planning a rapture maybe in May 2022, and he figured he'd take care of the psychopaths then, and that they would come in useful for some things, you know. Because there was a time when we felt it wasn't safe to, like if we had to execute somebody, like when the Jesuits killed Barack Obama, we replaced him with an automaton, because back in 2012, to replace him with a Jesuit we felt would have made him automatically evil. We didn't realize it, but replacing him with an automaton made him automatically evil too, because we turned him into a psychopath. Yeah. Yeah. The reason they tricked us is because psychopaths can fool anybody. It's like I was telling Garbage Man last night, they even fool the clinical psychologists and the psychiatrists, okay? Yeah. What they'll do is they'll rationally and level-headedly study psychopathy and how they're defined, and then they figure out ways to outsmart you. One thing about psychopaths, they could all win an Academy Award for acting, okay? Seriously, nobody can put on a better performance than a psychopath. They don't feel the normal human emotions, but they're brilliant observers, okay? And they're good mimics. So, but you need to look at those eyes. They're always as cold as ice. There is a psychopath shooting a gun. Give him a public execution on Gabriel Chan of Fox News, Brent. I think they're coming from that house right over there. Lightning bolts and slingstones and all willing and knowing psychopaths. Ouch! Take them out, Gail Schuler. Take the cold-hearted bitches and bastards out. They're everywhere. Brent, get our military down here. We need to set up scanners all over town and kill them. Right over there. That person gets a public execution on Gabriel Chan of Fox News. Take them out. Take them out. Okay. Did you hear that? I don't know what that was. They're gone. Hi, psychopath. Have a good day. See you in hell. Because that's where you're going. See the psychopaths in hell. Yeah, I dare you to shoot me. I dare you. You'll be arrested. At least I'm going to heaven. I dare you to shoot me, psychopath. Okay, arrest that psychopath, Brent. Take him out. Take him out. They're going to hell. That psychopath is yelling at me. Take her out. She's dead. She's going to be dead. Well, she's going to get a public execution. On Gabriel, I just shot a lightning bolt at her. She's going to be dead. She's screaming like a psychopath. She's yelling at the top of her voice. She will be executed. I bet Brent's over there tying her down. What a day. Yep, public execution. Chop her up in bits and pieces and burn her up in a big bonfire, Brent. Her and all her companions. On Gabriel Chan of Fox News. Definite psychopath. He said, that isn't the way to handle a psychopath. They're not going to intimidate me. No. This is something I'd die over. At least I know where I'm going when I die. We cannot allow these people to take over the planet. Yeah. Besides, if she wants to claim I'm crazy, they can hear the gunshots in this recording. Yeah. I've got the evidence I've got the goods on that bitch. Yep, take her out just like we had to execute Ted Bundy. Yeah. People like that are God Almighty. They cannot be allowed to live. They're very dangerous. Okay, what a day. We're gonna have fun, eh? Yeah, she actually shot a bullet at me. I heard it ricochet off the pavement. A bullet, yeah. I heard it. And I decided to walk right by her. Zach Knight says I have balls of steel. I guess that's proof. I love Jesus. I'm not going to let these thugs win. Okay, you guys. As you know, I've decided this particular walk video I'm going to make public. Let me just report to you what I heard, which appears to be accurate. The Psychopath Jesuits, under the leadership of Psychopath automaton Sun Tzu, have taken over, it appears, Malaysia and Iran. They were trying to create a bioweapon. This is what I heard on Gabriel Chan of Fox News, 00 on cable. Hi, you guys. What they did is they kidnapped Middle Eastern men and made slaves out of them, forcing them to ejaculate to make semen for a semen bioweapon. They were going to drop bombs all over the earth and make everybody retarded. This sounds like something a bunch of psychopath automatons with IQs in the million would come up with, okay? So that was their goal. So Israel has not been shooting missiles into Iran. That has been Brent and my men, okay? So as usual, the fake news has gotten it all wrong. Brent had a successful mission. He took out all of their semen factories. They were deep under, they were like in underground bunkers. They're apparently still in operation because last night, here's what I got at Kroger, 12 kitchen bags and 1,000 sheets, and I had to deal with some psychopaths on my way up and back. Yeah, like I said, psychopaths will go scorched earth. I would give my sister a score of probably about 38, maybe even 40, on Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist. So she is very dangerous right now. And she's just as evil as Angelina Ballerina was, but worse than Angelina Ballerina because she's smarter, okay? So that's the latest that I've heard. Now, I heard that from Garbage Man. My men are not reporting to me. So I'm going to go ahead. I was informed by Zach. Hi, you guys. I was informed by Zach that I recommended to Brent and to Zach that they make a documentary out of Robert Hare's book about psychopathy. And Zach said they would be doing so. So you really need to understand the enemy to defeat them and to be safe. Robert Hare said, let me go ahead and talk to you guys just a little bit. Hold on. Yeah, I'll go ahead and bring this over this way. Yeah. Excuse my no makeup look, but you know, I'm busy. Dealing with psychopaths is no picnic, I'm telling you, huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, shoot. Yeah, let's go this way. Their brain control is awful. Their brain control is awful. Let's see, where am I? Let's see. Ah! Just came back from my walk. I'm going to read my notes. On how to deal with psychopaths. This is actually a walk video that I give to my Patreon supporters, but because I had some very interesting goings on this particular walk video, I think I want to make it public. Jesus, I believe, would like that. Let me see if I can find, here it is. It's called Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of the Psychopath. And this is Robert Hare. I recommend everybody go to Gabriel Chan of Fox News and get information about how to deal with these people. Unfortunately, it looks like we created about 72 million psychopaths when we made all those automatons to replace the innocent medical people that I was brain controlled into murdering, okay? And cold psychopath that Sun Tzu is, he has no scruples about blaming me for the crimes of the Jesuits who used me like a Manchurian candidate to take out 72 million innocent people, which I still am furious about. It's a total violation of everything I stand for. Okay, so here's what you need to do in dealing with psychopaths, okay? I'm just going to kind of like give you a summary, a survival guide. The police tell us that a determined burglar can break into even the most secure home. However, they also say that knowledge of how burglars work, common sense, and a good alarm system or an aggressive dog can reduce the risk of being victimized. Similarly, although no one is immune to the devious machinations of the psychopath, There are some things you can do to reduce your vulnerability, protect yourself. Know what you are dealing with. This sounds easy, but in fact can be very difficult. Okay? And Robert Hare said that although his book should help, all the reading in the world cannot protect you from the devastating effects of psychopaths. Believe me, I should know. Yeah. Yeah. Devastating effects of, I think I'll leave the lighting the way it is. Yeah, I'm too busy to wear makeup. I'm busy dealing with 72 million psychopaths that are obsessed with me because they see me as an obstacle to their goal, okay? Don't believe all this stuff they're saying that they got to take out the evil woman, Oh, anyways, let me just go ahead and continue here. Everyone, including the experts, can be taken in, manipulated, conned, and left bewildered by them. A good psychopath can play a concerto on anyone's heartstrings. Psychopaths are found in every segment of society, and there's a good chance that eventually you'll have a painful or humiliating encounter with one. Your best defense is to understand the nature of these human predators. Try not to be influenced by props. It's not easy to get beyond the winning smile, the captivating body language, and the fast talk of the typical psychopath, all of which blind us to his or her real intentions. But there are a few things worth trying. For example, don't pay too much attention to any unusually captivating characteristic of people you meet. Dazzling looks, a powerful presence, mesmerizing mannerisms, a soothing voice, a rapid-fire verbal pitch, and so forth. Any one of these characteristics can have enormous sleight-of-hand value, serving to distract you from the individual's real message. Many people find it difficult to deal with the intense, emotionless. Like when I was out there dealing with that psychopath who tried to shoot me, she had a fellow team worker with her sitting at the bus stop, and he was staring me down, and I went back like this. I stared him right back down. And I told him he was going to hell. Yeah, I just went like, he was giving me a psychopath stare. Many people find it difficult to deal with the intense, emotionless, or predatory stare of the psychopath. Normal people maintain close eye contact with others for a variety of reasons, but the fixated stare of the psychopath is more a prelude to self-gratification and the exercise of power than simple interest or empathic caring. Some people respond to the emotionless stare of the psychopath with considerable discomfort, almost as if they feel like potential prey in the presence of a predator. Now, that's how they wanted me to feel, but I wasn't going to play their game. Others may be completely overwhelmed and intimidated, perhaps even controlled, with little insight in what's happening to them. Whatever the psychological meaning of their gaze, it is clear that intense eye contact is an important factor in the ability of some psychopaths to manipulate and dominate others. The next time you find yourself dealing with an individual whose nonverbal mannerisms or gimmicks, riveting eye contact, you said, "Why did you dare that psychopath to shoot you?" Because I knew she wouldn't. There were witnesses there. Okay? There were witnesses in the cars. She was a cold-hearted. Her goal in shooting those bullets was to intimidate me from doing my Gail Commandment walk, so she could cause the Gail shield to collapse, so the psychopaths can take over Earth. So I knew she wouldn't shoot me, and I had an opportunity to get evidence that I'm dealing with a conspiracy of psychopaths. So thank you, psychopaths, for giving me the opportunity to expose you and help keep our planet safe. Let me continue. The next time you find yourself dealing with an individual whose nonverbal mannerisms or gimmicks, riveting eye contact, dramatic hand movements, stage scenery, and so on tend to overwhelm you, close your eyes or look away and carefully listen to what the person is saying. Like I said, I've got these buzzards figured out. I read Robert Hare's book from cover to cover. I grew up with a psychopath. I know them like the back of my hand. Are the eyes windows to the soul? Many people believe that they are. Although the eyes are in fact highly fallible indicators of the inner world of others, they are not entirely devoid of information, particularly when the message they convey to others appears inconsistent with the individual's facial expressions and verbal behavior. When the eyes say one thing and the tongue another, a practiced man relies on the language of the first. That's, you look at those eyes, ignore their dramatic performance, is but one of the scores of maxims that could be cited. An acquaintance told me about her experiences with a love thing. A man who had stolen her affections and had then used them to control and batter her emotionally. I found it difficult to look at his eyes because they confused me. I didn't know what was behind them, and they didn't tell me what he was thinking or what his intentions were, she said. Clinical anecdotes about the empty eyes of psychopaths abound, but it is true crime books that offer the most vivid descriptions of how unsettling their gaze can sometimes be. For example, in his book, Last Rampage, James Clark had this to say about Gary Thiessen, a convicted murderer who masterfully manipulated the prison system. You're saying, oh, she wouldn't have, if she could have shot me and gotten away with it, she would have done it without missing a beat and without losing a minute of sleep, that psychopath. But because there were witnesses in the cars around me, she knew it would be a losing game for her to shoot me. That's why she didn't do it. I banked on that. I banked on the fact that I sized up these people and determined they were psychopaths, and I knew how to deal with them. Tyson, a convicted murderer who masterfully manipulated the prison system, escaped from prison with the help of his sons and went on a killing spree. But Gary's most striking physical feature, the thing most people noticed and never forgot, was his deep-set, expressionless eyes. It was as if his eyes had no connection with any emotion he expressed. Whatever his mood, whether he was angry, jovial, or anything in between, his eyes remained the same, empty. It was impossible to tell what Gary was actually thinking or feeling by looking at his eyes. His stare was riveting. Oh, that guy sitting in the bus stop, he was looking at me like, and I just went like, I did that right back to him, and he looked at me like, he was just as cold as ice. Yeah, if he could have killed me and gotten away with it, he would have done it in a heartbeat, simply because I was in his way. Yeah. His stare was riveting, unsettling, and with a malign intensity. What people remembered most about Gary were those cold, hard eyes. Joseph Warmbaugh's book, Echoes in the Darkness, is about William Bradfield and Jay Smith, two high school teachers convicted, the former in 1983 and the latter in 1986, for killing a fellow teacher and her two children. The book contains numerous references to the eyes of the two men. For example, Warmbaugh had this to say about Bradfield. He had brooding blue eyes. His gaze was so intense it could transfix. So his blue eyes were variously described as poetic, icy, or hypnotic, depending upon his moods. A colleague reported that he'd intimidate you with those piercing blue eyes. Yeah, that's what the guy at the bus stop was trying to do with the partner in crime with the psychopath who tried to shoot me. I heard the bullet hit the ground, you guys. I heard it bounce. Yeah, she was shooting her gun. And you say you went that way? Yeah, because this isn't going to end. This has been happening every day now for the past couple days. My sister is stalking me. She is the head of a band of stalkers. Yeah. And I want to get the evidence on her. He gave his famous stare to Rick Guida, the prosecutor, who'd been told by an FBI agent that the Bradfield stare had once made him fall back 2 steps. The stare practically demolished Guida. He was literally floored. He sat down and played with the dog. When Bradfield tried the stare on a police officer, Jack Holtz, the latter stared back and said, "That bullshit only works on intelligent people." I was like the police officer. The police officer stared back. Equally interesting was Wambaugh's description of J. Smith, recently freed by the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on procedural grounds. Smith's secretary reportedly said, "You've never seen such a pair of eyes in all your life. There was no feeling in them. You might think you've known a few people with cold fish eyes, but not like his." Wambaugh commented that they were not fish eyes. They were eyes that newspaper editors in later years loved to isolate for effect. They were referred to as reptilian, but that was not correct either. Later he said that all the teachers had trouble describing the eyes of their principal. Amphibian came to mind, but that wasn't precisely correct either. Smith's secretary finally realized what his eyes resembled, said Wambaugh. Not fish, not reptiles, but the eyes of a gopher. That, my friend, is the prince of darkness, said a teacher. Can the eyes reveal the devil incarnate, as the teacher's comment implies? In cases where a real or fictitious serial killer, a Ted Bundy or a Hannibal Lecter, commits unspeakable crimes, it may be difficult to believe otherwise. However, it is likely that the behavior of psychopaths, including the few that murder and mutilate, stems more from a total indifference to the feelings or welfare of others than from sure evil. Their eyes are those of an emotionless predator, not those of Satan. I hate to say this, but I actually think Satan's a little bit more virtuous than my sister. Slightly, not by much. But interesting as they are, anecdotes and examples of this sort should not lull us into the false belief that we can reliably spot a psychopath by his or her eyes. Yeah, let me tell you, I've met some who can put on, like I said, they can win an Academy Award for acting. It is all too easy to misread the eyes of others and to draw erroneous conclusions about character, intentions, and truthfulness. Oh, I forgot to mention, I finished the first story about my sister, which is probably why she's out for scorched earth right now. Yeah, I believe she's trying to kill me. Yeah, you saw what just happened to me. You heard it, right? That was a gun. They were shooting at me. Though she missed. It was basically an intimidation tactic, trying to discourage me from going on my Gail commandment walk. To believe otherwise is to court disaster. Don't wear blinkers. Enter new relationships with your eyes wide open. Like the rest of us, most psychopathic con artists and love thieves initially hide their dark side by putting their best foot forward. But they go further to exploit the axiom that social intercourse depends on trust, and that it is impossible for us to pay close and cynical attention to everything they say and do. Accordingly, they typically attempt to overwhelm their victims with flattery, feigned concern and kindness, and phony stories about financial dealings and social status. Cracks may soon begin to appear in the mask they wear. But once you are trapped in their web of deceit and control, it will be different. This is why I refuse to give my sister sent me a letter. My son is getting the will money from my mother, okay? My sister is playing like my lawyer, Terrence Jenkins, didn't win his case in court. I don't know where she's getting the money to come up with fake will money, but my son's getting my will money, okay? She's playing like he's not getting it and trying to get me to con me into giving her my social security number. Oh, horrors, man. My sister would love to kill me, and I'm going to give her and she's going to frame it on my men and make it look like they did it. Okay? But once you are trapped in their web of deceit and control, it will be difficult to escape financially and emotionally unscathed. The police and consumer advocates tell us that extra caution is called for whenever someone or something seems too good to be true. This is good advice, and if followed, will help protect you from the psychopath's potentially deadly snare. At the very least, you should take the time to check out any new acquaintance who appears to have a financial or romantic interest in you. I'm not suggesting that you hire a private investigator every time you meet someone at a party or in a bar, only that you make some reasonable inquiries. Ask the individual about his or her friends, family, relatives, employment, place of residence, plans, and so forth. Oh, by the way, my first story, my goal in writing the first story about my sister is so that she will be diagnosed by the clinical psychologist and psychiatrist as a psychopath. We need to do this to protect ourselves from her, okay? Yeah, she's very dangerous. I grew up with her, and I can tell you, after reading Robert Hare's book on psychopathy, she is a psychopath. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a psychologist, but I actually got a copy of the modified psychopathy checklist, which is what psychologists and forensic psychologists use to say that somebody's a psychopath. I would give her a score of about 38. She's a very dangerous one. About 36 or 38. I went through the list. Okay. Ask the individual about his or her friends, family, relatives, employment, place of residence, plans, and so forth. Psychopaths usually give vague, evasive, or inconsistent replies to queries about their personal lives. Be suspicious of such replies and try to verify them. This is sometimes surprisingly easy to do. For example, several years ago, a woman I know became romantically involved with a man she'd met at her church. Yeah, my sister is stalking me right now. I can't go out the door, and she's the head of a conspiracy of psychopaths. I strongly suspect she may be the Antichrist. The reason I suspect that is because, like this level-headed psychopath she is, she's not going to attack me and my men unless she thinks she can win, okay? If the Antichrist cannot be killed, so that makes me suspect she thinks she can win because she cannot be killed. That's why she's doing very daring things like what she just did this morning. That black lady who tried to shoot me, I believe, is working for my sister. Okay? This is sometimes surprisingly easy to do. For example, several years ago, a woman I know became romantically involved with a man she'd met at her church. He appeared to be well connected. And, you know what they'll do? According to Robert Hare, some psychopaths will claim to be born again. Yeah, they'll claim to be born again. And that's how they get themselves out of jail. And they put on such a convincing performance. And then once they get out of jail, as a born-again Christian, they continue to commit the crimes they committed that got them into jail, and even worse. And then they get even smarter about fooling you. And they can also fake like they're mentally ill to get out of prison too. They're not insane. They know exactly what they're doing, and they understand reality. They just have a deficit in empathy and emotion and have zero conscience. He appeared to be well-connected and to have impeccable credentials. He said he was a graduate in business administration from a well-known Eastern university. She considered investing heavily in a business venture he was promoting. When I met him, I told him that we were graduates of the same university. But he was evasive about his experiences there, always managing to change the subject. My suspicions aroused. I did some checking, this is what Robert Hare said, and learned he had never been a student at my university. Further investigation revealed that he was a swindler wanted in several countries. He skipped town, leaving my friend disillusioned by the experience and angry at me for destroying her fantasy world. Yeah, they're such good con artists. She basically conned my mother into writing a lying statement about me. She tried to accuse my father of poisoning my grandma. Yeah, so she could get the will money from when my grandma died. She did this when she was young. She's been a psychopath her whole life. Keep your guard up in high-risk situations. Some situations are tailor-made for psychopaths. Singles bars, social clubs, resorts, ship cruises, foreign airports, to name but a few. I mean, I can't even go for a walk now without these creeps creeping up on me, and my sister's sending them to me. Yeah, that's what she's doing. They're proxies for her. Now, I'm going to expose her butt. I got to do this to protect myself. In each case, the potential victim is lonely, looking for a good time, excitement, or companionship.
and there will usually be someone willing to oblige for a hidden price. Yeah, she's out for scorched earth because I'm exposing her. I have no choice. If I don't expose her, she's going to kill me and frame it on my men like Brent Spiner, who are my friends. She's already trying to separate me from my support system, which is exactly what psychopaths do. So I got to nip this in the bud. Single travelers are a favorite target of psychopaths, who readily spot them looking lost and forlorn in a foreign airport or tourist spot. For example, I know a professional woman who was weary, lonely, and homesick after several weeks on her own in Europe. She was befriended by a helpful man at the airport in Lisbon. Posing as an undercover agent on the track of a smuggling ring, he managed to win her confidence and to enlist her aid in the operation. In the ensuing weeks, the pair traveled all over Europe, running up enormous bills on her credit card. When she finally became suspicious, he dumped her. In retrospect, she said, "The whole affair seemed bizarre, but at the time it all made sense. I was tired, depressed, and he was so understanding and comforting." Know yourself. Psychopaths are skilled at detecting and ruthlessly exploiting your weak spots, at finding the right buttons to press. Your best defense is to understand what your weak spots are and to be extremely wary of anyone who zeroes in on them. Judge such people more critically than you do those who do not seem to be aware of or catering to your vulnerabilities. If you are a sucker for flattery like my mother was, that's how my sister managed to get my narcissist mother to submit the statement she wrote to a judge, which was lies that made me appear insane so that my mother could get police to come to my door and arrest me and take me off to a psych ward. Yeah, my sister did that. If you have a bit of larceny in your soul, you are particularly vulnerable to schemes that are a bit shady. Lonely people with money are extremely easy targets for the psychopath. Knowing who you are is not always easy. Now, I have a tendency to have low self-esteem and to feel guilty over things I shouldn't feel guilty over. Like, I'm still feeling guilty over those 72 million people that I was brain controlled into giving out that order because I thought they were all murdering people with the COVID shot, right? The psychopaths are not going to let that die. They know I feel guilty about it. Actually, they probably would have been clapping. Yes, clapping that I was brain controlled into murdering 72 million. And they wouldn't have lost a wink of sleep over it. They wouldn't have cried one tear. Self-examine it, but they know that I didn't like it. That's why I resigned from the presidency. So they're trying to say that the resignation was a fraud and that me appointing Brent in my place was me actually using Brent as my proxy. Don't believe them. Psychopaths lie 98% of the time. They only tell you the truth 2% of their life. They're such good liars, too. Self-examination, frank discussions with family and friends, and professional consultation may be of help. Damage control. Unfortunately, even the most careful precautions are no guarantee that you will be safe from the predation of a determined psychopath. Yeah, unfortunately, my psychopath is my sister, okay? In some cases, the matter may be beyond your control, as it usually is in an arm's length financial relationship with a psychopath. Many frauds and scams are perpetrated against banks, brokerage houses, savings and loan institutions, pension funds, and so forth. Individual investors have no say in day-to-day operations, and they can lose their money through no fault of their own. For example, a distraught high school counselor recently told me about an investment broker who lost several $1 million from the teacher's pension fund the broker had been entrusted to manage. The counselor was out several $100,000, not because he was careless, but because the officials responsible for finding a reputable investment broker had been conned by a slick psychopath. Forensic psychologist J. Ride Malloy tells of his being snared while interviewing an applicant for a job whose entire resume eventually turned out to be phony. The interview went quite smoothly, though. Malloy said in a telephone interview, "I was really impressed with this guy. Couldn't get over how bright he was. As we talked, he'd drop in a phrase here, a phrase there, that really had me standing back and thinking, wow, this guy is actually brilliant. How do I get him to want the job? It took me a while, longer than I'd like to admit, to figure out that he was quoting from several papers I had written and recently published. He was impressing me, yes, but with what? With my own brilliance. Ideas of mine I thought a lot of. A normal person might say, I read your paper and thought this and such, but this fellow, who turned out to be a complete imposter, had an intuitive grasp on what among all possible things would get me to do what he wanted. For him, the interview was a great opportunity to perpetuate a scam. Okay, perhaps the most heart-rending situations are those in which bewildered, frantic parents try to deal with a psychopathic son or daughter. Buddha did my mother a great favor to transition her to heaven so she wouldn't have to deal with her psychopath daughter, Sandra. Sandra Metcalf is a dangerous psychopath. I would probably give her a score of 36 or 38 on Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist. She is very dangerous. And I had an opportunity, you heard the gunshots, okay? My husband Brent was with me. He can vouch for me, okay? I believe those were proxies for my sister Sandra. She is trying to kill me. Yeah, because I'm exposing her. I hate to say this, but if my mother tried to stop my sister, I wouldn't put it past my sister to kill my mother. That's why I think Buddha took her home, let her go to heaven. She was kind of like raptured. My sister is very dangerous. Almost as distressing are those in which someone doggedly searches for a means of coping with a psychopathic spouse. In such cases, as well as those in which a psychopath has managed to enter your romantic life, about all you can do is attempt to exert some sort of damage control. This is not an easy task for most people, but some suggestions may be of help. Obtain professional advice. I receive many calls from concerned people who think a husband, wife, child, or friend is a psychopath and who want my advice on what to do about it. I cannot offer advice under such conditions. A proper diagnosis of psychopathy. That's why I wanted to write the story about my sister. My sister needs to be diagnosed as a psychopath. Okay? That this diagnosis needs to happen. I know she is one. I read Robert Hare's book. Okay? By a knowledgeable clinician. It's time-consuming and requires a good deal of reliable information. My father is still alive. He can vouch for me because she tried to target him. Okay? I already wrote a story about her. I'll have a link to it underneath this video, including an intensive interview with the individual in question and access to collateral and corroborative information from a variety of sources. Employers, family members, friends, business associates, the police, and so on. I'm going to say this much. If you are able to get my sister, okay, and you can't find her, she's probably the Antichrist. She may have quit her job on purpose because she knows she's about to be arrested. So she can hide. Okay? She's a sharp one. Make sure the clinician you consult is familiar with the literature on psychopathy and has had experience in dealing with psychopaths, preferably in the context of family therapy and intervention. If you have the resources, get several opinions. This can be a very frustrating procedure. I can't count the number of times a telephone call, or usually a wife or parent at wit's end, has described repeated attempts to get someone, anyone, to understand the problem or even to recognize that there is a problem. Typical is a telephone call I received from a woman in Maine who had read a newspaper article about my work and was convinced that her husband perfectly matched the profile of psychopathy outlined in the article. From what she told me about him, it appeared that she might very well have been right. For more than 10 years, she had been trying to get professional help, starting with her family doctor and moving through a succession of psychologists and psychiatrists, all to no avail. The problem was that her husband always put on such a good show that her account of things was seldom believed. None of these clinicians could see beyond the husband's charming and convincing display. The poor woman began to believe that she was the real problem. Even after a solid diagnosis has been made, your troubles are far from over. The next steps will depend on your particular situation and should be planned with the aid of a competent professional experienced in dealing with psychopaths. State psychiatric and psychological associations usually have a list of clinicians they can recommend. You might also try local mental health and university counseling centers. I actually get wonderful support from my husband, who is a medical doctor. Okay? Even though I don't see him, I can feel him humping on me. He lives in this apartment with me in another dimension. Here's how you deal with psychopaths. Don't blame yourself. Whatever the reasons for your involvement with a psychopath, it's important that you not accept blame for his or her attitudes and behaviors. Psychopaths play by the same rules. Their rules, okay? Their rules with everyone. Of course, your own personality and behavior will have something to do with the specific nature of the interactions that occur. For example, a woman who stands up for her rights may be physically abused, whereas a more submissive woman may spend her life wondering about the whereabouts of her philandering husband. A third woman might walk out at the first sign of trouble and never look back. That's what I wish I could do, but my sister won't let me. In each case, the basic problem is having a psychopathic husband in the first place. Okay? And my problem is having a psychopathic sister in the first place. I had no control over the fact that I grew up with her, that she targeted me, and that I was forced to expose her in order to keep Brent in my life, my husband in my life, and not let her destroy me. Similarly, parents of a psychopathic son or daughter continually agonize over their own role in the development of the disorder. It is very difficult to convince these parents that the chances are they did nothing wrong. Actually, I can't say that about my mother. My mother was a narcissist. However, as I state in the story that I wrote about my sister, we had good role models in our paternal grandparents. So I don't think I can 100% blame my narcissist mother for the fact that my sister is a psychopath. Again, they may have ameliorated or exacerbated the situation, like my mother did, but there is no evidence that parental behavior causes psychopathy. Beware of who the victim is. Psychopaths often give the impression that it is they who are suffering, which is why my sister probably injured herself and is now applying for workman's comp. I give her like a 38 on the psychopath checklist, and that it is the victims who are to blame for their misery. Actually, my men are her victims. Robin Williams, I'll be writing the story about this. She played a big role in his murder. He did not commit suicide. He was murdered, and she played a big role in that. Okay? Psychopaths often give the impression that it is they who are suffering, and that it is the victims who are to blame for their misery. Yeah, she's going to try to blame my men. They've been victimized by her. Okay? She's going to try to harm or kill me and frame it on my men. I'm not going to let her get away with this. But they are suffering a lot less than you are, and for different reasons. Don't waste your sympathy on them. Their problems are not in the same league as yours. Theirs stem primarily from a psychopath's misery stems primarily from not getting what they want, whereas yours result from a physical, emotional, or financial pounding. Recognize that you are not alone. Most psychopaths have lots of victims. Yeah, my sister ties her husband up on a leash. That's what my men say. It is certain that a psychopath who is causing you grief is also causing grief to others. Tracking them down to exchange stories and information could help you deal with the problem, if only to demonstrate that it is not you who are at fault. Everyone is vulnerable to the psychopath, and there is no shame in being victimized. This may be difficult to accept if you have just been conned and are too embarrassed to complain to the police or to testify in court. But you may be surprised by the number of other people in your community who have been taken in. Be careful about power struggles. Keep in mind that psychopaths have a strong need for psychological and physical control over others. Boy, do I know. I've got no control over this. She's stalking me because I'm forced to expose her to stay alive and to stay happy and to keep my man in my life. So I have no control over this. They must be in charge. And they will use charm, intimidation, and violence to ensure their authority. In a power struggle, a psychopath will usually focus on winning. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't stand up for your rights, only that it will probably be difficult to do so without risking serious emotional or physical trauma. Yes, I exposed her, and now she's trying to shoot me. She's using proxies. In some cases, you may be able to use the psychopath's win-at-all-cost philosophy to your advantage. For example, in a local case, a woman and her psychopathic ex-husband were engaged in a prolonged and bitter custody dispute over their 2 children. The lawyer for the woman, realizing that the man was dangerous, was intent on winning and didn't actually care about the welfare of the children, advised his client to agree to a joint custody arrangement. This is what the psychopath ex-husband had wanted all along, and having won the battle, he lost all interest in the children. Although the lawyer's tactics worked in this case, that lawyer ran a great risk. What if this psychopath man decided to exercise his right of joint custody with potentially disastrous consequences for the children? That's why I won't give my sister my social security number. I think some of it's like an ego trip on her so she can continue playing her game. However, if she is the Antichrist, giving her my social security number is going to give her a tool she can use to destroy me and frame it on my men. So I think I did the right thing. What I did is when she sent me her garbage letter to my P.O. box, I just signed for it so that she can't claim she has to hire a private investigator to find out whether I'm alive or not. I don't want her to know my address. Set firm ground rules. Although power struggles with the psychopath are risky at best, you may be able to set up some clear ground rules both for yourself and for the psychopath to make your life easier and begin the difficult transition from victim to a person looking out for yourself. For example, this may mean that you will no longer bail him or her out of trouble, no matter what the circumstances. A woman I know was caught in a web of financial manipulation and deceit woven by a glib consultant. Every time she confronted him, he convinced her that he was working on the problem and that she would soon get back the money he supposedly had invested for her. Finally, in desperation, she decided not to discuss anything with him unless there was a third party present or everything was in writing. It soon became clear to her that she was getting nowhere with him, and she began legal proceedings to recover her money. Reasonable but firm ground rules, what you have to do to live here, may be the only way to preserve your sanity. Hold on. I'm making a video about it. Yeah, I'm working on that video now. Okay, yeah, Zach Knight just Skyped me. Reasonable but firm ground rules. What you have to do to live here may be the only way to preserve your sanity when dealing with a psychopathic son or daughter. Okay? These rules must be clear and consistently enforced if they are to stand any chance of having an impact. Okay, specific parenting skills and strategies are outside the scope of this book, but the books listed in the notes for Chapter 12 provide helpful information. Okay, never mind. Okay, I got distracted. I just told them that they put something in the air, some chemical that was giving me bad leg spasms. Fortunately, even though I woke up about 3 or 4 times because they're dropping bombs over me. They also have brain control drugs in them. Okay, here's enough. So, but I was able to get maybe 7 hours of sleep. I just went right back to sleep. I think Brent was probably, he's a medical doctor, he was probably trying to remove the toxins from my body too. I have faith in him. Okay, don't expect dramatic changes. To a large extent, the personalities of psychopaths are carved in stone. There is little likelihood that anything you do will produce fundamental, sustained changes in how they see themselves or others. They may promise to change and may even show short-term improvements in their behavior, but in most cases, you will face years of disappointment if you believe that permanent changes for the better have occurred. Although some psychopaths do mellow a bit with age, and as a consequence become somewhat easier to live with, in most cases, they remain what they have always been. The problem is particularly tragic when it is a son or daughter who is psychopathic. In a frantic search for help and understanding, the parents typically find themselves shunted from one professional or agency to another, seldom with satisfactory results. The bewildered parents use an enormous amount of energy and resources in generally unsuccessful attempts to understand and control their child. In most cases, they face years of frustration and demands to bail their son or daughter out of trouble. Cut your losses. The psychopath, I'm going to get me some water to drink, hold on. The psychopath may succeed in shattering your self-confidence and may convince you and your friends that you are unworthy of his or her time, and even that you are losing it. The more you give in, the more you will be taken advantage of by the psychopath's insatiable appetite for power and control. Rather than make fruitless attempts to adapt to a hopeless situation, usually by giving in, accepting your lot in life, or losing your self-identity, it may be better to recognize that your emotional and physical survival requires that you take charge of your life. This can be a tricky move, even a dangerous one, and it requires good professional advice, both clinical and legal. Of course, if you are the parent of a young psychopath, you cannot simply give up on your child. You will have to work closely with teachers, counselors, and clinicians experienced in dealing with psychopathic children, no matter how modest the expected results. Use support groups. By the time your suspicions have led you to seek a diagnosis, you already know that you're in for a very long and bumpy ride. Make sure you have all the emotional support you can muster. Many organizations and groups are devoted to helping victims of crime to understand and cope with their plight. In most cases, the victim learns that he or she is not alone and is able to share experiences with other victims. For example, most urban areas have crisis centers and support groups concerned with domestic violence, emotionally and behaviorally disturbed children, and victims' rights. Depending on the nature of the problem, one or more of these established groups may be of real benefit to you. What I'm doing right now is I'm letting the public know that I believe my sister, Sandra Metcalf, is a very dangerous psychopath. Okay? And she may be the Antichrist. And we need to be aware of that. And yeah. Now that I'm exposing her, she's trying to kill me. Basically. But she's smart in the way she goes about it. She wants to frame it on my men. But what we really need are support groups specifically designed for the victims of psychopaths. Okay? Yes, if any of you out there feel like you're being victimized, I encourage you to contact my men at Gail's Men, GAILSMEN @yahoo.com. Okay? My men will probably set up a support network. We are being stalked, people. Unfortunately, when we created the automatons, we created 72 million psychopaths. My sister appears to be working with them, and Satan is working with them. So everybody, yes, I wanted to let you all know I have got the goods on her. It has been terrible. The past couple days, every time I go out, they all deliberately bump into me. Yesterday, I needed to make a deposit at my bank, and I had to carry a large amount of cash on me. And because there was a bit of confusion about how I needed to pay my rent this month. And I thought a charity was paying for my rent and the money hadn't come in, and so my landlord wanted to know. And so I was going to go to the bank. I was going to get a money order made, and it was really strange that Kroger, usually their money center opens at 8, and they weren't open till 10. It's really hot. I don't have a car. Okay, my sister knows this. She's trying to get me to die of heat stroke and all sorts of things so she can say, oh, Gail's men don't take. You say, why don't you have a car? I'm afraid to have a car. I'm afraid they're going to get me in a car accident and disable me. I don't use a phone because they use brain control signals on the phone. Yeah. 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 Anyways, you guys, so what I did, I was able to get to the bank and make the deposit, and I was able to pay my rent for July. And the rent may be covered by a Catholic charity. Yeah. But in the meanwhile, I didn't want to, have a problem with my landlord. My rent was in the written contract, I had to pay my rent. And I think my sister was trying to get me to get a money order. She didn't like the fact that I was going to make a deposit in my checking account, and she was going to cause me to lose the money order, which means I would have been out all the money on the money order. And then she would have blamed it on my men. That's what I think she was up to. Anyways, you guys, yeah. What's going on in Iran? What's going on in Iran, assuming that what I hear is accurate, they were the 72 million automatons possibly working with my sister and with definitely working with Satan. Were planning on building a bioweapon they made slaves out of Middle Eastern men, extracted their semen. We're planning on launching semen bombs over the whole earth to make everybody retarded. I got to admit, that's a pretty brilliant psychopath ploy. They would definitely win Earth. They have taken over Malaysia and Iran. I'm not sure about some other countries. Fortunately, because of my brilliant and brave husband, Brent, they have not got the United States. Anyways, you guys, we've got our work cut out for us. But when Jesus left us in June 2022, he was glowing and happy. He has faith in my Brent, and so do I. Apparently, this is winnable. I will do my best to keep the Gail shield up. They are trying very hard to make it fall. But I love Jesus, and I am not going to allow my sister to win. No. I cannot have a world where the only virtue is to worship a bunch of cold, ice cold automatons. Yeah. Where the psychopaths will declare themselves the superior species. That would be unthinkable. We cannot have that.
In a world of secrets, where darkness reigns, there's a warrior rising.